Yo, what's up, y'all? So today we're gonna listen to Tucker Carlson Network. Tucker Carlson, he used to be a big Donald Trump fan and supporter, but now I think the tables are turned and he's kind of getting away of what Trump has been doing. He's against it with what's going on with Iran and Israel. So we're gonna see what's going on. I see that they have my professor right here. And we're going to go listen to him and see what's the dire warning to Trump. Do you think what Trump is doing is wrong? Are you guys supporting it? I don't know. I mean, my opinion, I think war is never an option unless it's necessary. And I think that deaths aren't necessary unless it's an option to be necessary. That didn't make no fucking sense. But let me shut the fuck up. Let's watch this video.
If you were the commander-in-chief of the United States, what would you do at this point, as of today?
Commander-in-chief meaning Donald Trump?
Yeah. You get to make the decision. What does America do next if it's acting in its own interest, if it's trying to preserve its power and wealth? At this point, what does it do?
Well, first of all, I would acknowledge that all these events are interconnected, right? So this trade war with China, this war in Ukraine, this war in the Middle East, it's all interconnected because the American empire is too overstretched and it has its fingers on everything. And so it allows its enemies to provoke it into these never-ending wars. So what I would do is basically sit down everyone, okay, including Russia, China, Iran, and say, it's time for a new world order where we are partners in this relationship, right? Before America was the hegemon, before the US dollar was the world reserve currency. But now what we want to do is open a dialogue where everyone is respected, where America is no longer the bully, but a willing partner in creating a new economic order that benefits everyone and not just a few.
I think that's the wisest possible advice and probably the only path that preserves civilization. But the one country standing in the way of that is Israel, which is the only beneficiary of this war, as you just said. I think that's true. Can you think of another beneficiary other than Israel of this war?
Well, Russia benefits, right? Because Russia is trying to win this war in Ukraine.
That's correct.
And America is forced to lift oil sanctions. And so now Russia is now able to take all these war profits, right? And then help the Iranians, finance the Iranians in the struggle against the Americans and Israelis. So the Russians also benefit tremendously from this war.
Yeah, but fair point. Israel has to be constrained by the United States in order to do what you just recommended it do. Is that possible? Does the American president have the authority to control its client state?
So if you look at the domestic situation in Israel, Israel no longer behaves rationally. It is sort of overtaken by eschatological fever, right? So if you look at videos coming out of Israel, there are rabbis going around saying that this war in the Middle East, even though it's destroying Tel Aviv, it's good for us because this will lead to the coming of our Messiah. So they believe that it is when Israel is under the most strain, when the very existence of Israel is threatened, then God will intervene because the Jewish people will come together as a nation again and commit themselves, renew their faith in God. And once God sees the blind, trusting, absolute faith of the Jewish people, then he will save his people by sending his Messiah, who will then redeem the Jewish people. So another way of saying this is secular temporal matters don't really matter. This war in the Middle East, not an issue. What matters is divinity. What matters is our relationship with God.
Yes.
So what matters is faith. If nuclear bombs go flying, doesn't really matter.
What's so interesting is that, 25 years ago at 9/11, whatever you think of how that happened and why, there was, I saw it personally, a political Islam. There were Wahhabists. There were a lot of Islamic radicals around the world. And for a bunch of reasons over 25 years, that hasn't disappeared. There still exist Islamic radicals, but it's not, an important political force anymore. At the same time, as Islam in general has become much more moderate, and the GCC is kind of the most obvious example of this, there has been a rise of Jewish Wahhabism and evangelical Christian Wahhabism, so to speak. I mean, you've seen this eschatological extremism among some American Protestants, Christians, and some Israeli and American Jews. How did that happen? What is that?
Right. So first of all, I don't think we can ever overestimate the influence of eschatology in American politics.
Exactly.
So I'll give an example where about a quarter of Americans are evangelicals, and a lot of them are Christian Zionists. So they believe that Israel is crucial, the linchpin to achieving God's plan and the return of Jesus. And so a very prominent figure that you probably know very well is John Hagee, who runs something called the Christians United for Israel. It's 7 million members. And these are the people who are financing a lot of the conflict in the Middle East, in Israel, because they're the ones who are funding West Bank settlements. And so Christian Zionism, it is an extremely powerful political force in America. So your question is, how did this happen? And
yes,
the issue is that this is a plan that has been in motion for centuries, and it's a very complicated history. But it involves different religious groups among the Jews, Septime Frankists, Shabbat Lubavitch, which you've talked about. But also it involves the Freemasons, the Knights Templars, the Rosicrucians. It involves the Jesuits. So you have these different secret societies, different religious organizations working together through the centuries to achieve this plan for the end of the world, which heralds the Messianic age, okay? And there are different components of this plan, but the basic components are, one is the creation of the nation state of Israel, which happened in 1948. And then you need to have the building of the third temple, which requires the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is actually, which could happen during this war, given what we've seen so far. So the Israelis have closed off the Al-Aqsa Mosque, as well as other religious sites like the Church of Holy Sepulchre, to tourists these past few days. There's rumors that for the past 2 years, the Israelis have been conducting these archaeological digs under the Al-Aqsa Mosque to basically destroy the foundations of the mosque, so that they can conduct a controlled demolition of the mosque and blame it on a missile strike from the Iranians. And there's actually talk among the Israelis of using this plan to ignite a war between the Arabs and the Persians. So the Al-Aqsa Mosque needs to be destroyed for the third temple. They also talk about this war of Gog and Magog between Israel and the entire world. Then the coming of the Jewish Messiah, the creation of the Greater Israel Project, the return of all Jews from the diaspora. So there are different components to this plan. If you just observe geopolitical events, we're seeing these events converge together today. I mean, all these events are playing out. So it seems as though there are these very powerful shadow forces working behind the scenes. We don't know who they are, but it seems as though they're able to control geopolitics in a certain manner as to fulfill their eschatological script.
What role do you think Donald Trump plays in this?
That's a really hard question to answer. So let's look at different possibilities. Okay, the first possibility is that he's been employed as an actor and he's just following a script, but he doesn't really know where this movie is going. He's just doing his part, but he's manipulated behind the scenes by people around him. And when reporters asked him, like, why is this war in Iran happening? He did say that his advisors, which include Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, Peter Hegseth, Marco Rubio, told him that the Iranians were so close to getting a nuclear weapon and that the Iranians were going to attack first. And so I was basically misled. And I think that's probably true in that Trump surrounds himself with certain people that have a certain political eschatological agenda. So that's one possibility, that he's just an actor. Another possibility is that he himself has a messianic calling. Okay, and what I mean by that is, if you go back to January 2021, he was politically dead, right? Because the January 6th riots happened. He was impeached twice, and then after he left office, there was lawfare conducted against him, and he went bankrupt. So it was as though the entire world went against him. But now he's president of the United States. And so how would he personally understand this? I think a lot of it is God has asked him to serve. There's a call to serve, and he has to fulfill a mission. But what this mission is, okay? What this mission is, whether it's to save Israel, whether it's to save America, whether it's a part of a grander scheme, only he in his heart knows. And I think no one except him knows, okay? So I think that's another possibility. And the third possibility is that this is all Israel's doing. Netanyahu is the one who's forced him into this sort of situation because the Israelis attacked first. And Marco Rubio said this, where, you know what, we wanted these negotiations, but the Israelis were planning to attack. If they attacked, the Iranians would be compelled to attack both the Americans and the Israelis. And we did not want to put our soldiers in harm's way, so we attacked with the Israelis. Okay, so it's possible this is all Netanyahu and all his machinations. And another fourth possibility is they have co-opted him. Like, there's blackmail on him. There's and he has absolutely no choice but to do what he says because he's compromised in a certain way, and maybe his family is under threat. So all four are possibilities, and quite honestly, I have no idea which possibility is the most correct.
Yeah, I don't think anybody does, and I've really tried to keep speculation to a minimum. You always want to believe that people's motives are transparent, that they state why they're doing what they're doing. But of course, you can never know what's inside a man, right? Even in yourself, it's hard to know your own motives very often. So I think that's a wise take. People seem to be more inflamed, not just emotionally, but physically, and more tired than...
We're not going to listen to any of those little ads and stuff. So, yeah, this is Professor Jang. Man, I mean, at this point, it sounds like a crazy conspiracy, right? It sounds like, hey, there has to be too many people in on this for it not to have any type of leaks or anything. But you're starting to see the cracks under the surface, and you're starting to see everything fall apart. And like you said, this U.S. is changing from a democracy to a theocracy, where basically religions are running the actual government, and they're trying to set a plan in order. And it sounds crazy that this has been a plan over centuries, but everything that comes with planning. And it's like the people that are playing the long game are the ones that are actually winning. And it may sound crazy, but that's what they want you to think, right? They want you to be like, oh, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist that believes in these things. Oh, Israel isn't controlling the world and stuff like that. Why not? There has to be somebody pulling the strings. Why don't we know who's pulling the strings? And I do truly believe that there's a power in belief. And if you get enough people to believe something, you have a whole motion of this belief coming true. There's too many coincidences that happen. And I'm pretty sure you had it in your life where a coincidence happens and you're like, wait up, this is keep coming up all the time. We just talked about this and this person pops up. Or we just talked about something that was going to happen and it happens. That's intuition, dude. That is God's sign to you that it's going to happen. And you brought it to life. But your intuition brought it there too. There's a sense of purpose that you have to follow in this world. And these people feel like that they have a calling. And I feel like Donald Trump feels like that too. He has a calling that he has to fulfill within this group of people. And I feel like either that assassination, it could either be two things: fake, and they caused it to happen, or secondly, it did happen and it gave him an eye-opening moment where he felt like he was saved from God and was meant to be here for a reason. So either or, it means that he's working with these people to fulfill whatever they want to accomplish. And I mean, he's probably being played as a puppet, as we know. I mean, he could be compromised. Like he said, we don't truly know what the actual motives are for him and what he does stuff. But I feel like he's working in his own motives and he has his own ulterior motives, and he's getting paid an amazing amount of money to keep this charade going, because obviously he doesn't care about the American people. It was all a facade. You can see it throughout the day. If he truly did care, they wouldn't be asking for $200 billion to fight this war. They would be putting it back into people's pockets that actually need it in this country, helping with medical, with school, with shit that we need to survive. But yeah, that's what I guess the warning to Donald Trump was. I don't see how that's a fucking warning, but we'll see it. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. I holla at y'all. Peace out.